Good evening and welcome to the data panel. We've talked about data from yesterday, and these are the data guys. My name is Nnenna. I come from the internet. I'm here with my team from the Alliance for Affordable Internet. But we, as the World Wide Web Foundation, we actually do more than access and affordability. We do voices, making sure that the internet remains open, and we also do participation, and it's under participation that we have our open data programs. Recently, we've launched the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development Data, and today I have an eminent panel with me. They will introduce themselves, we will talk about data together, but it's a relaxed panel. So don't worry about being streamed, just remain with us. Before anything, there is a wonderful gentleman seated by me. His name is Yusuf Murangwa. He is the Director General of the National Institute of Statistics of this beautiful country, of 1,000 hills and 1 million opportunities. And before we do any other thing, I want to know if there are statisticians in this room. Any other statisticians, please show by a raise of your hand. If you read statistics in school, if you're a data expert, let's see your hand. Okay, thank you. So what is it today? It's World Statistics Day, and we want to celebrate all of our statisticians who count us, who keep the numbers. There is a cake. It's at the back of the stage. And Yusuf, on behalf of all of us, I would like to offer you this. The cake is going to come later, but you have this from all of us. And if you want to join me, what do we sing for people on their birthday? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to all statisticians. Happy birthday to you. All right. It's better data, better lives. And that's why we are here. And I want to come to you now, birthday man. What is data and where is data?
Thank you very much for the birthday. Data is a wide concept. I can group it in three categories. One is the traditional data that we all know, in form of like surveys that we do, censuses that we do, and that one many statisticians, many non-statisticians are very conversant with it. Then there is data in the form of administrative data. And this comes both in government and private sector. When you want to do anything, for example, in government, you have to register and fill in forms. Even in the private sector, in banking, in telecommunications, if you want to get connected, a SIM card, airtime, everything, you have to fill in some forms. So that comes in the form of administrative data. And until now, we haven't exploited it much. There is a lot of that, especially in the private sector, but even in government, we haven't exploited much of it yet. And there is also data that gets generated through our daily activities. For example, like daily commutes, you're coming from point 1 to point 2, you're making calls, you're doing so many other things. Automatically, that data gets generated, and that is a form of data that we haven't yet exploited. And in fact, if I may call it, it's the big data. Okay. It's a big data. So those three forms make the horizon from which we see data.
Thank you very much. I hear the private sector has data. There is a lady at that end, Antoinette. Welcome.
Thank you.
what is the potential of data that you have?
Thank you. I'm honored to be here. So I believe that the power of data lies in analytics. What is the use of all this volume, variety, and velocity of the big data that we speak about if we cannot analyze it, drill down, solve it? And the power of data lies in analytics. And it's in our everyday lives a lot more than we realize. We are now living data-driven lives, data-driven love lives. We've heard from other sessions where people have met their spouses online. This is as a result of inputting data somewhere about yourself, about your likes, your interests. And it influences every aspect of our lives, and it has invaluable power in its analytics. So I dare say that the real black gold lies in analytics.
Thank you, Antoinette. Earlier in the day, I was wearing a brown dress. Then they told me you can't be moderating a panel called Black Gold and be wearing a brown dress. So I ordered a new one that is mined and refined just to suit this panel. So I think I'm a stakeholder. Dozie, apart from people who can dress up in black and gold, who are the other stakeholders of the data ecosystem?
Okay, thank you, Nnenna. The other stakeholders are everybody. Everybody is a stakeholder. And the concept we are pushing is a concept that allows every citizen to be part of collecting the data that we need to make decisions for sustainable development. We came up with a concept of data communities. Instead of doing it haphazardly, we want to group citizens into data communities, where we define a community not from where you live, but from your association with data, either from the producing or managing or disseminating. For example, land. People who are associated with land become a land data community because they are experts on issues relating to land. They interact with land data in the course of doing their daily work, so that we don't have to go and start doing a survey and asking them. They generate it when they're doing the land allocation, land sales, and everything. The same way we define other data communities. So everybody here is a stakeholder and a potential data collector, data manager, data dissemination. Once we understand that concept of data communities, is for you to define how do you constitute a community based on your relationship and interaction with data.
Thank you very much. So all community people, welcome. I don't think we have enough cake for all of you, but we can share by community. Atusi, yes. You're welcome. You work in different capacities, partly with government, partly with private sector, and it's important to understand the opportunities that you see.
Thanks, Nnenna. It's tremendous opportunities out there. This data revolution that we're seeing globally actually is making huge opportunities, both for the government. I mean, government, they can serve the people better with the data. They can actually make their service delivery much more efficiently and effectively. And also the private sectors as well, with private sector's involvement, they could actually help and then collaborate with the government to provide different opportunities, which is not only for the good for the citizen service deliveries, but also economic opportunities as well. There is a tremendous opportunities available utilizing data, so it's quite exciting.
Thank you. So the exciting times are here, but exciting times don't just come up by themselves. Before gold is actually normally blocked and then it's refined. So maybe we should talk about the challenges in our daily work. And I want to begin with Yusuf. What are your challenges at the National Institute of Statistics in the work you do daily for Rwanda and for the world?
I think I can group challenges in two aspects. First of all, production, and then using the data. And what we see in production as a challenge and fundamental challenges, other challenges can be handled through mobilization and so on and so forth. But capacities are a big challenge. Capacities to collect data, to generate data, to manage the data, to process it, to analyze it into useful informational products. Data in itself cannot be gold. It's only gold if we've processed it into informational products that are useful, that can be used for decisions. And then on the use side, of course, after you've done all of that, you have to make it available to users, and users should have the capacity to use the information. Users should have the capacity to use the information, otherwise all the effort, all the investment will be wasted. So we are seeing challenges both from the perspective of production, but also from the side of use of the data.
Right. Antoinette, you do analytics, so you feed on data, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. How do you face the challenges every day with your clients? Is there a market for data? Are you in business for some time?
Yes, so SAS has been in business for 40 years, and we've done only analytics for all the 40 years. Oh. It's a very niche area, and so we've come across a lot of challenges, especially in the West African region where I operate and in Eastern Southern Africa. I think one of the biggest challenges for a business in analytics in Africa has been access to the data, one. So a lot of the data is either locked away, inaccessible in disparate computer systems, or it is in formats that we cannot process, we cannot use. So with the onset of big data, we have a lot of unstructured data, and we need to be able to use that, convert all that unstructured data to make sense of the data. A third challenge is lack of skills. So as a business, we are continually doing research and development for cutting-edge technology, and we find that there is a huge skills gap in how we support the technology that we have developed, especially here. I feel that this boils back to something dear to me, which is education of our young ones in the area of STEM technology, science, technology, engineering, and math. We need to do more, train more, encourage more in those regards. So these three areas are extremely challenging for us as a business.
All right, thank you. At the Web Foundation, we work, actually over 50% of our staff are engaged in the open data program, because we believe that the opening of data is the baseline for governance, for engagement, for all of those. So for us, on a daily basis, we are working to open up data, and that is 75% of what I do at the Web Foundation. And I can tell everyone here that it has not been easy working at the policy end, working at the standards end, and working at adoption. And that is my daily battle. Dozier, in March, you organize a high-level conference on data revolution, where you give birth to data communities. Going forward, where do you see the Africa Data Consensus leaders in this challenge?
Okay. Thank you. The Africa Data Consensus, for those who have not come across it, is simply a statement of principles that the high-level conference developed that say, these are principles that if we apply, will help us implement the data revolution in Africa. And one challenge we see is, how does the official statistics coexist with this other data from the data communities? How do we build a capacity of official statistical offices to be able to coordinate this diverse form of data coming from everybody. We still want the official statistics to be at the center. We want an expanded data ecosystem, and that is the big challenge that people still talk about statistics but no, it's not or, it's and. How do we, and it's a challenge that we have to make that shift and prepare everybody to be part of this bigger data ecosystem. The second challenge I see, now that you mentioned open data, is that we need to define a new business model that will allow these young people we see all over Africa to make money from data. As I said somewhere else, I said that when you ask people about poverty, poverty means not having money. And what we need to do is, if we help everyone make money, then poverty will go. How do we come up with the government, what does government come up with the right environment, right regulatory environment to allow people to make money from data, repackage data and sell it and make money? There are all these young people who, without going to computer school, can do a lot of things with the computer. Open data for them, and you find them innovate and create jobs for themselves. They don't need you to employ them. They can employ themselves.
Okay. Young people, we hear you. Actually, I've received the draft policy, open data policy of Rwanda.
Rwanda, yes.
You are advising the Minister of Youth in a country of young people. What are your challenges in rolling out data for money?
Money. Thank you. Thank you so much. Data for money. First of all, I think the perception by the business community is still lacking, especially in Africa. There is a case, for example, there is a data available from the retailers in Kenya, but they did not have the skills available, nor actually the business mind. And this actually customers' data is actually sold to the conglomerate in the international conglomerate. So they were not being able to mine these data or to use these data within the regions. And that's really a tragedy, I think, a challenge that we have to overcome. And getting to the money still, I think, traditional business still are not really utilizing the data they have, let alone the data which is available in the government. I also had a case in another Eastern African countries that they were very pushing for the open data initiative, but it's really, the civil societies took really great stride in utilizing these data, but the business communities, they did not actually follow suit. And if you look at this trend in other countries, in developed countries, it is really business communities also really start using this open data for their commercial benefits and economic benefit as well. And that kind of perception maybe is lacking in Africa still.
Okay, I want to give a quick shout out to those who are on stream. Please tweet at us. You are not far. I have Carol, who is participating from Washington. I have Emmy, who is in Nairobi. And I have someone at the African Development Bank in Abidjan. Guys, we are together. Please feed in your questions. And the audience that is here, please start scribbling your questions down, because we don't have all the data. That's what Yusuf said. Yusuf, what has been the lesson you've learned working with the National Institute of Statistics? What can you give to us as a gift? What can we learn from you and the job we do going forward in the data revolution?
First of all, there is a big myth. There is a big myth about statistics. So many people think statistics is very complex.
Yeah, I think so.
It's a myth. It's not right.
Is it not science, hard stuff?
It is science, but it's not rocket science. So there's a big myth. Many people think statistics is very complicated. Actually, it's not. Statistics is our daily lives, and anyone can learn statistics, especially the basics. And it's the basics that are most important. It's the basics that are most important. And I was discussing with a colleague in the morning, and he said sometime back, GPSs were very sophisticated technologies only to be used by the militaries and so on and so forth. But today, almost the whole world is using GPSs. It's required that at one point in time, everyone should be using statistics. And at that time, statistics will be actually gold. You'll not be able to get anything or benefit from anything if you can't put data together, analyze the data, and then take decisions that are actually meaningful. So data statistics is not complicated. That is something that I've learned. And I think it's worth sharing with other people. And the second thing, especially to statisticians and people who have data. People who have data are very conservative. Governments, private sector, civil society, everyone. We are seeing people are very conservative with data. They are locking up the data because of so much fear. Fear for the unknown, by the way. And in fact, there's nothing to fear about. What we've learned is that when you get data, and you have to be brave and open up.
Okay.
Open up, put it available to people to use, and we'll be amazed by how much can be of benefit from the data.
Right.
So those two things, I think, are very important.
Don't be afraid, be open. Is that it?
That's it.
Right, folks. Antoinette, what can we get from you? We are no longer afraid. We are going open. What do you want to share with us in terms of what works?
I agree totally with the DG, Yusuf. The myth is that data is for statisticians, and that is not the case anymore. We are each individually generating data on a daily basis, massive amounts of data on a daily basis, and we are using this data and the analysis of this data to improve the quality of our lives. I mean, we have so many smart technologies out there. For instance, the Fitbit is a wristband. Many of you may be familiar with that. Mm-hmm. There you go. So it's capturing massive amounts of data, how you slept, how much water you drank, how many steps you took, and it tells you if you've done a good job at the end of the day, if you need to do better tomorrow. And it's not just about health now, it's wellness, total wellness, so it's a total shift in our lifestyle. And this is just one aspect. There's so many different ways.
Who is the person who has the wristband here?
Kojo.
Gentlemen, can we see you? Can we zoom in on him? Okay, so we have a live data consultant in the room. We're going to come back to you. It's good that we feel the reality of what we're doing.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Dozie, what have you learned all these years? You've been in geo, you've been all around data, and data's been around you. You are one of those we are celebrating today. What can we take from the celebrants?
Okay. What I've learned, to build on what Yusuf said, is that data is everywhere. But majority of the data we need to make decisions are not with the government.
Okay.
They're outside. And that is why we are saying that we need to find a way to harness that data those data that is everywhere in everybody's custody. How do we bring them together? Government, somebody has a nice quote in another conference, we say, government does not have monopoly of valuable information. Most of it is out there. How do we bring them in to play a part in decisions that affect you and I? That's the first thing we've learned. The second thing I've learned, and I was warned when I was coming up here, if I don't remember it, I will not go back, that most of the data we are putting in the cloud, we need to find a way to make sure that we control the cloud. We don't want to put data in the cloud that we don't know where it is, that it's just out there, it's in the cloud. That cloud could be anywhere. They can lock you out whenever they want. That's the second thing we need, that we need to find a way to be part of controlling where all those data are stored, so that if they want to lock us out, they cannot lock us out. We know that our data is with us. That's the second thing. The third thing I've learned is that we need to move away from data just to report on progress, but data to actually make decisions to achieve the goals. Because there's so much emphasis on reporting on progress. And you want me to report on how many people died. I'll report that people have died, and I failed. I want to concentrate on data that will make me achieve what the goal is, to make sure people don't die. Knowing that if I did that, it will be available for me to report when it's time for reporting. And that's one mind shift we have to make in Africa, that yes, while we are reporting on all these goals, we need to start from when we need to implement, make sure we have data to implement, and therefore it will be available to report, and not start on reporting when people have, I report that people died, but that have failed, but people have died.
Okay. And for those of us here, please tweet. Let's know what data is most important to you in the work you do. That will help us get a feedback for all of us. Mr. Advisor, what have you learned in all these ways? There are so many challenges,
yes.
there are so many opportunities.
Yes.
What do you want to give us? What should we do?
I think one very important lesson learned for us, I think, doing the data and open data was the use. I think the power of use. Because when you actually presented them with the data, raw data, they came up with such a tremendous different ways of utilizing these data into either it is economic benefit or the social benefit as well. I mean, when you give this data to the Code for Africa, Code for Rwanda, all these peoples, they come up with brilliant ways of utilizing this data for social goods. In the same token, I think this morning, Professor Beji from the Carnegie Mellon University was talking about how the data is being utilized for the real-life cases. I think he mentioned about safe motors. Mm-hmm. How are the data on the drivers, the motor drivers' actually characteristics on how they drive, is converting them into the safety data, so that the people are more actually acceptable to take. Okay, which driver is safe, which driver actually will not have accident, and so on. In the same token, I think he also mentioned about the case of malaria. It is the use of big data and how this malaria is carrying through. And these are all because these young people who do not have any hindrance against these data. I think they're mentioning about the data being sorry or locked up into the data analysis, but this use has no hindrance. Mm-hmm. And I think that is really where we are getting at, and that's, I think, it's a potential for Africa.
Okay. From the Web Foundation point of view, we know that openness and data, as you said before, empowers. It empowers the government, it empowers private sector, and it empowers citizens. And if we work for social justice, we believe that participation is key in social justice, and data is key to participation. When we know the figures, when we have the information, then we can take informed decision. We can take decision that saves money for us, we can take decisions that saves our health, we can take decisions that saves the economy. So openness in data is a win-win situation for all the stakeholders. So I want to come back to all the stakeholders seated in the room. These people don't have exclusive data control. It's open, and we want to hear from you. Anyone has something to contribute or a question here? We have a question from one of the remote participants. The person is asking, where does openness begin? In data. But let's hear from those in the room. Do we have roving mics? Okay. Yes, please.
My name is Tamsir Diawate. I'm from Mali. I don't speak English. Et voilà, je voulais poser des petites questions. Je suis directeur de publication du magazine TIC Mag au Mali.
Donnez-nous juste une seconde pour que les panélistes portent leur casque, s'il vous plaît.
Okay.
1 minute so that our panelists can put on their headsets. C'est bon? OK. Allez-y, monsieur.
OK, très bien. Qui parle de données forcément parle de sécurité. Qui parle de données parle forcément de la confidentialité. En fait, on ne peut pas dissocier la confidentialité ou la sécurité dans ce qu'on appelle données. Alors, en cela, j'aimerais savoir, l'accès des données seront-ils fiables tant que les serveurs, l'Afrique ne dispose pas de serveurs et de data centers nécessaires? Alors, est-ce que lorsqu'on parle de ces données-là, il ne serait pas d'abord mieux qu'il y ait un centre de communication en Afrique avant de procéder à de telles initiatives? Merci.
Over here, to the lady, and then to the gentleman. The lady, then the gentleman. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Angelique Weeks, Executive Chairperson for the Telecom Regulator in Liberia. I didn't have my headset, so I'm not sure if he spoke to my question because I heard him saying something about confidentiality.
He talked about data privacy,
Okay.
since we don't have our data stored in Africa.
Okay.
Yes.
Having recently gone through the Ebola crisis in Liberia, many of the international NGOs and other sources of help kept asking for access to call detail records that we as the regulator would have to authorize the mobile network operators to provide. Our challenge and concern related to how that data would be used. Quite often, people collect data and it ends up being converted into commercial use. So we had concerns about safeguarding the data and making sure that people weren't making money off of a crisis situation that our country was facing. I'd like to hear from the panel if they have any suggestions about approaches that could be used broadly so that we can quickly respond to those requests for data, but yet protect the privacy and other national security interests that are called into question by releasing call detail records. Thank you.
Okay, the balance between privacy and security. Could you give the mic to the lady over here? Then we'll come to you, sir. Please go ahead. Shane, it's up to you. After you, we'll come to the lady. Yes. Yes.
All right, thank you. Shane Dale, CEO of Property Mode. We're very interested in property valuation as an asset class for Africans to unlock the value of their land and contribute to the economic growth. It's probably the biggest untapped financial sector in most African countries. However, a lot of people don't like telling you the truth about what their property is rented for or sold. So I think sometimes you need regulatory assistance from the government to really try to get people to to really give accurate information, because bad data gives bad outcomes. So there has to be a lot of effort to clean the data and to make sure people have don't penalize people for telling the truth, by heavy taxation on certain transaction points if it causes financial outcomes. So it's about bad data and trying to clean that up. Thank you.
Okay. We'll end with you, ma'am.
Thank you. This issue of privacy and security of data is one that is central to the future of the internet. As a free and open internet is one of the things that we aspire to, but at the same time, we see there's a lot of movements, one of which my data belongs to me, a lot of concern that there are human rights issues that are in there that we are not looking at in as systematic a way as we should as a global community, not just in Africa. So I just want to give some examples. I was so happy when our sister from Liberia, Honorable Minister, I'm not sure if you're a minister, but that you mentioned in the health sector. What we've seen is with mobile telephony, there are a number of surveys that are organized via the mobile phone without going through the national research oversight body in whichever country could be concerned. And then you see that that data is commercialized, and our population is not aware that by answering this little survey on their mobile phone, it was feeding into a report, which is then presented internationally without going through any of the normal research protocols.
Okay.
So that's just an example of where lack of citizen education may result in infringement of their rights because sometimes even they're giving the location, and so the traceability. You know, when it comes to data, we always say we want to render the data so that we protect the privacy of the individual concerned. So I just want to throw that set of issues out there, because if we don't address it, we don't know what kind of internet we're going to have in future.
Thank you so very much. I've picked out the three issues, the three baskets of issues. One is openness versus proprietorship. The other is privacy versus security. And the other one is data availability versus data accuracy. So maybe we'll begin with you. You are the landlord.
Thank you very much. It's a very good question. Where does open data start from? Open data starts from accessibility. Can you access the data? And the second most important thing is usability. After you've accessed the data, can you use the data? And nowadays we are talking about, of things to do with machine readable. For example, the data has to be in a format that allows someone who have accessed the data to use it using a machine quickly and productively. That does not mean that all data, especially data that is confidential in line with the identity of the person of which that data concerns, should be open. That's an area that should be very clear. That area of confidentiality, identity, should be sacred, should be protected. Another aspect that I want to address is abuse of data. That is increasingly becoming very common. My advice is it can be commercial. It can be commercial abuse, a lot of marketing, a lot of selling, so many things. And it could be criminal. It could be as well criminal. So the abuse, we should be open. We should be very careful. There is a lot of tendencies to abuse data, and the solution to this is that data should not be given away, especially mass data concerning the population and so on and so forth, without clear conditions of use. The legislation should be very strict. There should be very clear conditions for use. There should be mechanisms to follow through and see that the conditions have been adhered to. Otherwise, so many people want to abuse data. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dozier?
Okay. Thank you. Well, I'll just add something because you said most of the things I wanted to say. But in the Africa Data Consensus, where we said data shall be open by default, we also said that these data communities I'm advocating should be accredited by the National Statistical Office. So before a data community is formed, there should be some way of saying, I'm a data community, I'm now mandated to collect this data by somebody, a regulatory body, which would be National Statistical Office, who then set out the conditions of how to give data and how to use it. And the issue that Shane mentioned about land, that's where user education comes in, about people giving the accurate information. I'm not an economist, but somehow we have to find the balance between using taxation as a means of getting revenue and using taxation as a policy measure to push things. And I'll give you an example from Melbourne, because I know you're from Australia. I was there when you were talking yesterday. When I was teaching in the University of Melbourne, I wanted software in the student lab. A company came to me and offered me the software free. I couldn't install it in the university because the policy said you cannot install free software in the lab. They said, no, we'll sell it to you, 40 licenses for $1. Why? Because by giving it to academic research, they get a 150% tax rebate. So there's a big push for universities to get software out there, but we don't get it in Africa because of our tax. So it's to strike a balance between that tax as a policy measure to drive innovation and tax as a revenue collection, which is where user education comes in, that hey, I should give free, correct information for that.
All right. Antoinette, privacy and security.
Thank you.
I'd like to address what the Honorable Minister Wicks was talking about. So we have the NCC in Nigeria and the CBN. The NCC regulates the telcos and the CBN regulates the banks. We've had a mandate from the Central Bank of Nigeria recently to all the banks to make sure that each Nigerian that has an account registers and has a unique identity called the BVN, irrespective of what bank. So you might have bank with 5 different banks, but you will have one unique number. And we understand that the telcos also will have a lot of information about the banking system or the account holders, because you receive alerts on your mobile phones. Immediately you make a transaction, you get an alert. And now they're going to tie every single account you have to telephone numbers. This is very powerful. And I think that there is no way we can secure this amount of data unless we have legislation. Only very recently did the Obama administration sign a Data Act in May 2014. So this is, it's quite political as well, to try and get such legislative mandates passed as an act of law, but it is necessary for the protection, the security, and the integrity of each and every one of us, because we are generating our own data, our bank accounts, and our telephone numbers, our addresses, our email addresses, all our banking transactions. The last time we took a plane, everything is tied together in our emails, our phones, our tablets. And if we don't have legislative mandate to protect this data, we will be in a big mess very soon with all the big data that is flying around. Just very quickly, I want to address what Sean mentioned about data quality and integration. So the data process is not a project, so you don't begin it and end it. It is a continuous process. So you're continually refining your data, enriching your data, you're continually cleaning your data, cross-match referencing with new sources of data out there. So the BVN comes out, you have multiple telephone numbers, you go get a loan, they can cross-match all of that. If you tell a lie, it's a lot easier now to catch up.
It is easier to catch people.
Yes, so we need to use that in a good way, in a positive way. Yes, there will be a lot of malicious ways in which the data will want to be used, but I think if the government protects its citizens, we're heading in the right direction.
Right. So Achuchi will give you a last word.
Yes.
What's your advice? Because you're a professional at advice.
Yes. Since, everyone actually talked about all the legislative challenges, frameworks, and so on. So perhaps another thing, just for the privacy and securities, I think the technologies to anonymize some of the data, I think could be one way. Strip out the individual information out from certain critical informations, because it is really outrageous for someone to benefit from the crisis situations in Liberia, for example. And I just wanted to make sure that Sean's questions about data cleanness, I think it's really important that the people who actually provide the information actually feel that giving actually correct information actually benefit for them. I think that's a key.
Right. Thank you to those who are online and those who are here. Thank you for contributing online and contributing here. Thank you to our panelists. We have a very important panel coming up now. It's about the place of people like us. So what we've decided, we've overridden the main in this panel. We've decided to give some time to the next panel because we have a women panel. So sit tight, don't go nowhere. Our First Lady is coming to join us, and it's going to be a continuation. Happy birthday to all statisticians of the world. Keep up the good work. The word for today is once we have better data, we are going to have better lives. I wish all of us a better life, and I wish that we all contribute as stakeholders in the data ecosystem. On behalf of my panelists and myself, this is Nnenna from the internet, live in Kigali, Rwanda. Thank you.